Right. Hello, believers, deniers, and sheeple. Welcome to Conspiracy Talk, the podcast where we make up ridiculous conspiracy theories to oppose real world subjects. My name is Dan, and I am your host. Today we have frequent guest, Lucy.
Hi again.
Hello, how's it going?
Going good, thank you.
Good.
As always.
So, today we will be talking about the moon landing. What really happened when man first stepped on the moon? But before we start, quick disclaimer. Here at Conspiracy Talk, we don't believe or endorse any of our conspiracy theories, nor do we support misinformation, disinformation, or malinformation. Anything you hear from this podcast is purely for fun and entertainment. So, my theory is simple. You know Neil Armstrong, the first man on the moon? Or the quote-unquote first man on the moon? Guess what?
Yes. Am I meant to? Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
Was that rhetorical?
It's both rhetorical and not rhetorical because guess what? He's an alien. Neil Armstrong is in fact from the moon. So therefore, he did not land on the moon, but he did come back from the moon. As you see, according to Google, if you look up Neil Armstrong,
Yeah.
his main picture is in front of the moon. How
Yes.
else would he have a picture like that if he's not from the moon? Along with
You're onto
that,
something.
do you really think that we invented these spacesuits? No, that's just the clothes of the people on the moon. People on the moon wear suits like that because that's just the cultural clothes of the moon. If you're from the moon, you wear what we call space suits with the helmets. It's just how it goes there. It signifies your status on the moon. And Neil Armstrong, being the richest person on the moon, was the one who got to leave the moon and make contact with Earth. So this moon landing is all a ploy just to try to hide the fact that there are people living on the moon. People not people, but aliens from the moon. And Neil Armstrong is in fact one of those aliens. In fact, tell me, have you ever heard the last name Armstrong before? Like, it was like someone trying to make up a last name, and they look around, they see an arm, and then they see a muscle somewhere, and then they see a knee, and they're like Neil, and they're like Armstrong, and so like yeah, Neil Armstrong. It's the perfect excuse. So overall, Neil Armstrong, the first man on the moon, was never the first man on the moon. He is the first man from the moon. So yeah, that's the shorter one.
Wow.
That's what I've got.
So how did they find him on the moon?
When before this moon landing thing, they made contact with people from the moon, and they didn't want to tell the people on Earth that there were aliens on the moon. So they made up this whole idea of let's send people to the moon. But when in reality, they just had people from the moon coming back. So this was just to avoid fear by, avoid us being afraid of the aliens from the moon. Because, in general, they come in peace, but we can't be afraid of them because then that's only going to make it worse. And the government just wanted to hide the fact that there were aliens. So they decided to, once they found Neil Armstrong, they're like, okay, we have to find a way to announce that these people exist without saying that they're aliens. And they figured the whole space race and the moon landing was the way to do it. And yeah, that's right. The moon landing, not the moon landing, the space race wasn't even real either. That was the sole case of America and the Soviet Union working together because they really wanted to hide that there were aliens out there because that's
Right.
like
So they
one of their
made up
biggest
the
fears.
story.
They made it all up. They made up this rivalry. Soviet Union wasn't even communist. They were just no. We're not going to get into that area, but Yeah. So there we go. That's my opinion on the
Wow.
moon landing. What do you think,
Well,
Lucy? Well, I mean, what's
I
your theory?
think
Not what do you think about mine?
okay. So my theory. Well, first I'm going to start by asking you a question. You
Okay.
mentioned Neil Armstrong.
Hmm.
Supposedly the crew of Apollo 11, the spaceship that went to the moon and landed men on the moon for the first time. And obviously, we all know Neil Armstrong, first man on the moon, and his astronaut companion Buzz Aldrin, who went with him to the moon.
Yep.
You agree, right?
Yes, I do know who Buzz Aldrin is.
So, I would like you to now look at the Apollo 11 Wikipedia page
Okay.
because when I mentioned to you before this episode who I was going to be talking about, you asked who that is. And I think that proves my point. Michael Collins is not real. He does not exist. Are you looking at Apollo
Who's
11's
Michael
Wikipedia?
Collins?
Exactly. So are you looking at the Apollo 11
Yes, I'm looking
Wikipedia
at it.
page?
Yep.
Can you see the crew of Apollo 11?
Yes.
Read the names.
Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, Buzz Aldrin.
Yes. So supposedly there was some fellow called Michael Collins went with them. Apparently. Now,
Okay.
I truly believe this is not real, that he is not real. So, we all know the story. The spaceship goes up to space and they land on the moon. So, the supposed story is that Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, they go down in the Eagle to land on the moon, first steps on the moon, blah, 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 blah. And then Michael Collins, while those two are on the moon, he orbits around the moon, goes around the back of the moon, and comes back around the front to pick them up again when they're finished.
Oh,
He's the reason they got back.
is that actually
He's
what
the
they say?
reason. That is what they say
Oh,
happened.
wow.
So he's the reason they allegedly, well, he's allegedly the reason they got back to Earth, because they did get back to Earth. But I don't believe this is true. I believe that NASA were able to create artificial intelligence smart enough to pilot the spaceship, the Apollo 11, around the back of the moon by themselves. They had to make up a human to do it so that they wouldn't scare the public with this crazy technology. Think about it. You didn't know who Michael Collins was because he's not real. You've never seen the guy in your life. They just Photoshop him into the pictures. He represents the artificial AI. Artificial AI.
Artificial
The
artificial
artificial
intelligence.
yes, the artificial technology used to pilot the ship around the moon. Now, answer me this. Do you realistically think it's possible one single human to go around the moon all by themselves?
I mean, I don't know.
All on their own? You know what? There was a point in Michael Collins' supposed journey where he could not see the Earth. He went round the moon and the moon eclipsed the Earth from his viewpoint.
Wow.
He could not see a single piece of civilization, every single person he'd ever known, blocked out by the moon. Completely.
Hmm.
Allegedly. Now, you tell me, if you were in that situation, would you have the mental capacity to carry on? You're on your own, you're in outer space, you literally cannot see anything that you've ever called home. There's only the moon and the black void of space. How on earth do you manage to navigate around the moon all on your own and not go crazy? It's impossible. It had to be artificial intelligence. There's no way. There's no way a human could have done that. Second, why would they just send one human? What if he like passed out or something or became unwell? How would he manage to finish his mission? Surely then the two guys, Armstrong and Aldrin, would be stranded on the moon. There's no way they'd put all of that just on one person. It's artificial intelligence. They programmed it. Finally, without artificial intelligence technology, how did Michael Collins find the Eagle spaceship, the Eagle lander, coming back to the Apollo 11 capsule? How did he pick them back up again? The moon is big, right? We probably think it's quite small, but it's huge. The moon is huge. The moon is like the size of Australia from one end to the other in spherical
Oh,
form.
wow.
Yeah, it's huge. How on
Interesting.
earth would one silly little man driving a silly little spaceship manage to find these two silly little guys trying to fly their way back up? How on earth would they manage to reconvene in midair? I have the answer, and it's artificial intelligence. It is
Well,
robots. It is the takeover. There is no way a human would have been able to do that. There is no way.
all
Also,
right.
can you imagine the story? Say something happened on the moon. Say the moon is like a dangerous place, and the second you touch it, you die. And this is getting a little morbid here. But what if the two astronauts were two brave astronauts that really landed on the moon? What if they never came back? They could not send supposed Michael Collins back to Earth, being the only survivor. They had to have put AI in that spaceship to save face if it all went wrong. Because there's no way they'd put a human in that situation.
Hmm. All right. Interesting.
Also,
Oh,
one final thing. Supposedly, while Michael Collins was going round the back of the moon, there became a point where he was not in contact with the Earth.
wow.
They would not put a human in that situation. He physically could not have contacted Earth. He had to have been pre-programmed. There were 48 minutes on his orbit around the moon where there was no way for him to contact Earth. Like I
Hmm.
said, they wouldn't put a human in that position. They wouldn't. They just wouldn't. He had to be a robot. So, my final conclusion is that Michael Collins isn't real. And just in case you needed any more proof, Apollo 11 was his last mission. He was never seen again in space. So clearly, Michael Collins, he was made up, he's not real,
All right.
and they just decided he was real, just so we wouldn't freak out about crazy technology that they'd created to
All
keep
right.
the humans in line. So
Interesting.
there we go.
Yeah. So,
The end.
yep. So we agree. Whatever you think about the moon landing, there is something we were not meant to see. Even though I am right and Neil Armstrong is an alien. But Lucy, do you have any final thoughts you want to add?
No.
All right. Then thank you for listening to Conspiracy Talk. Conspiracy Talk is owned and produced by Open Mic Podcast. If you like Conspiracy Talk and want to see more episodes, or if you want like Conspiracy Talk and want to see what else Open Mic Podcast has to offer, subscribe to Open Mic Podcast on YouTube, follow Open Mic Podcast on Spotify and Instagram. Come back next Sunday for the next episode of Conspiracy Talk, but come back Tuesday for the next episode of Listen to Reality, the reality show on a podcast.